This is Mrs. Reister with Lesson 3.3, Example 2. For Part A, we have -3 and 4/5 plus 8 and 7/10 plus 5 and 1/5. My first step before solving this problem is to take these fractions and turn them all into common denominators, because we know when we're adding fractions, we must have common denominators. I see that I've got two fractions where the denominator is 5 and one where the denominator is 10. So with 5 and 10, the common denominator here is already listed, and that is 10. So I'm going to rewrite this problem using 10 as my common denominator. So I can rewrite -3 and 4/5 where I multiply both the denominator and the numerator times 2, because I know that 5 times 2 is 10. So 4 times 2 is 8. So my equivalent fraction is -3 and 8/10. And then my second fraction doesn't change. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my third fraction, where I've got 5. And I'm going to multiply the denominator times 2 to get 10, and then the numerator, times 2 as well to get 2. So I've got now -3 and 8/10 plus 8 and 7/10 plus 5 and 2/10. So now I can begin the process of adding here. So I've got one mixed number that is a negative while the other two are positives. So I can add my positives together first. So I'm going to add my whole numbers first. 8 plus 5 is 13, and then I'm going to add my fractions. 7/10 plus 2/10, which is 9/10. So now I have 13 and 9/10. And then I'm going to add to that my -3 and 8/10. So -3 and 8/10 plus 13 and 9/10. If you recall from adding integers with different signs, the rules apply the same here. We're going to look at the value with the number with the greater absolute value here, which would be this 13 and 9/10. So that tells us that our sum here will be positive, and then we are just going to subtract the absolute values. So we're just going to subtract these two. So what I could really do is just take 13 minus 3, which is 10, and 9/10 minus 8/10, which is 1/10. So what I've got here is 10 and 1/10 as my sum. Now in part B, I've got -1/4 plus -9/10 plus 5/4. I've already got the common denominators here, so now I'm going to look to see what's going to be the best method or best order to add these fractions, because I've got two negatives and then I'm adding a positive. So in this case, I am just going to add left to right, adding both of my negatives together. So -1/4 plus -9/4. I know that when I'm adding two negatives, I just have an even greater number of negatives. So -1 plus -9 is -10. And my denominator doesn't change, it remains 4. So I've got -10/4. And then I'm going to add to that my positive 5/4. And if you recall from part A, when we're adding two numbers where the signs are different, we're going to look to the greater absolute value, which is this -10/4. So we know our answer will be in negative, and then we're going to subtract the absolute values. So that would be 10 minus 5, which is 5. And again, our denominator doesn't change, it remains 4. So I've got -5/4. And we can take this one step further and we can simplify this. We know that 4 goes into 5 one whole time with 1 left over, and then I bring down my negative. So both of these answers would suffice as your answer for part B.